You were taught that your soul is pure, untouched, a blank canvas placed gently into a neutral world. But what if your soul was structured long before you became aware of it? What if the way you think, react, fear, and desire was formed within a hidden architecture you'd forgotten when you entered this world? The ancient Gnostic texts say something rarely talked about. They say humanity was not born in freedom, but beneath 7 rulers. 7 cosmic governors, 7 layered authorities, 7 spheres that shaped the world and ultimately shaped you, not metaphorically, but structurally. And here's the part most people never realize. Those rulers were not the highest power. They were lesser beings. Powerful, yes, yet blind to the true source beyond them. They formed the visible heaven, shaped the human body, organized the layers of the lower cosmos, and according to the Gnostics, they even participated in forming the human condition itself. Which means this question becomes almost unavoidable when you say, "This is just who I am." Is it really? Or are you speaking from within an artificial structure that was built for you? Because if structure shapes perception, then even your sense of choice may be unfolding inside architecture you didn't design. And the most powerful systems are the ones that never announce themselves as systems at all. Most of us exist within this architecture without ever noticing the walls, but some of us are beginning to see the barriers. In this video, we won't just uncover what the 7 rulers actually are, but the precise cosmological system described in ancient Gnostic texts. We'll explore how it relates to the formation of the human soul and why the hidden spark within humanity was never meant to remain visible. And we'll confront the real implication of this teaching that awakening is not about becoming something new. It's about remembering that what's inside you was never built by the rulers in the first place, the one thing they cannot touch. The teaching of the 7 rulers does not come from modern mysticism. It comes from buried texts discovered by accident over 80 years ago in Egypt. These writings preserved a radically different version of early Christian cosmology, writings which reframed and even reversed what had been taught by religions since the crucifixion of Christ. Among them was a text known as the Apocryphon of John. This was not philosophy, it was revelation. According to this text, above the visible universe exists an ineffable source, beyond form and physical comprehension, sometimes called the invisible spirit or the monad. From this source emanates the pleroma, the fullness of divine reality. But something unexpected happens. One emanation known as Sophia brings forth a being outside the harmony of the pleroma. This being ignorant of the higher realms becomes the architect of the lower cosmos. He is called Yaldabaoth, a false god who is served by 7 rulers below him known as the Archons. They became the 7 powers governing the 7 heavens, the planetary spheres known in antiquity: Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. To the ancient world, these were not just celestial bodies. They were intelligences, governors of fate, and shapers of destiny. The Gnostics did not deny their existence. They inverted their meaning. This inversion wasn't just theological, it was revolutionary. If the visible heavens were not divine harmony but structured limitation, then authority itself was called into question. And that was not a safe idea in late antiquity. Where traditional cosmology saw harmony, the Gnostics saw limitation. Where others saw divine order, they saw ignorance that was structured and solidified into reality. And here is where the teaching becomes less abstract and more personal. In the Apocryphon of John, the rulers are described as participating in the formation of Adam. Each contributes powers, each shapes aspects of the body, and each lays down structure. But the human remains inert until something else enters. A spark, a breath, a light from above the 7 heavens. The rulers may have built the architecture, but they did not create pure consciousness. This distinction is crucial because it reframes the human condition entirely. You are not merely a biological being navigating a material world. You are a being formed within layered cosmic governance, yet animated by something that does not originate from that system. Because when you understand that the structure is not the essence within you, that the rulers may govern the heavens but do not own your divine spark, the architecture begins to reveal its cracks. And once you see the cracks, you can no longer mistake the structure for yourself. So who are these seven rulers? Not as vague negative energies or abstract metaphors for human weakness, but as described in the Gnostic texts. In the Apocryphon of John, Yaldabaoth generates seven archons, each governing a heavenly sphere. Each corresponds to one of the seven celestial planets known to the ancient world. Each is assigned authority within the lower cosmos. These are not random. They form a structure, a hierarchical and layered architecture of governance stretching from the earth and upward through the planetary heavens. This is not poetic symbolism. It is cosmology. The ancient world did not see the planets as distant rocks suspended in empty space. They saw them as powers, intelligences embedded within the fabric of time. The moon, Mercury, Venus, the sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, each moving in ordered cycles, each associated with particular influences over the visible world. But to live beneath them was to live within their rhythm. The text describes the rulers participating in the formation of Adam. Each contributes to the shaping of the body, assigning functions, organizing faculties, structuring the visible form. They construct the outer framework of the human being subjected to their own limited understanding. They are craftsmen, but not creators of essence. Imagine a cathedral built without knowing the nature of light. The walls can be raised, the arches can be shaped, the geometry can be measured, but unless true light enters through the windows, it remains lifeless, empty stone. The rulers build the structure, but the structure is not yet alive. The body stood formed yet unawakened, a vessel without awareness. The architecture was complete, but something essential was missing. Structure alone could not produce consciousness. Only when a higher breath, a spark from beyond the seven heavens, descends into Adam does he rise. Because what animates the human does not originate from these cosmic rulers. If your body and your initial constitution were formed within the domain of the rulers, then your starting point in life is already inside a governed structure conditioned by cosmic forces tied to linear time, movement, planetary cycles, and fate. In the ancient world, the seven planets were believed to govern temperament, impulse, inclination, and destiny. The Gnostics did not invent this association. They inherited it and later reinterpreted it. They said, yes, these forces exist. Yes, they shape the lower cosmos. Yes, they form the visible human, but they are not ultimate. This is why the number 7 appears again and again. 7 heavens, 7 rulers, 7 spheres the soul must pass through. But in antiquity, those spheres were not abstractions. They were movements in the sky, the moon ever shifting, governing fluctuation and change. Mercury, quick and restless, associated with thought and exchange. Venus, drawing things together through attraction and desire. The sun, radiating identity, authority, centrality. Mars is force, conflict, assertion. Jupiter, expansion, belief, amplification. And Saturn, boundary, structure, limitation. These were not personality labels. They were cosmic forces, cycles that govern time itself. Seasons return, light waxes and wanes. Expansion follows contraction. Motion repeats in ordered rhythm. The lower heavens turn. And if the human being was formed beneath these spheres, then human life begins within that same pattern movement. Impulse rises and falls. Desire expands and contracts. Temperament stabilizes and shifts. The architecture is not chaotic, it is structured. The human being in this model begins life within a 7-layered system. Most people identify completely with what the structure produces. They say things like, "This is my nature, this is my temperament, this is just how I am." But what if what you call you is partially the echo of a layered architecture built in the lower heavens? The Gnostic texts do not reduce you to the structure. They only reveal the distinction. The structure is formed by the rulers, but not the divine spark within it. Because once you recognize that you are animated by something not produced by the structure, you begin to see that the structure itself can be observed. And what can be observed in the external has no true power within the internal, where the true source of reality comes from. If the 7 rulers form the architecture of the lower heavens, and if they participated in shaping the human constitution, then the next question is inevitable. Do they remain outside you, or does their governance continue through you? If the rulers govern the spheres above, and if those spheres shape the structure of the lower cosmos, then ask yourself, when a reaction rises in you, where did it begin? When a desire pulls you, is it entirely self-generated? When fear contracts your awareness, is that just simply personality? The ancient Gnostics believed that to live beneath the 7 heavens was to live within their influence of time, movement, and cosmic rhythm. The Gnostic insight does not say that you are possessed. It says you are positioned within architecture, an inside layered governance. And until that architecture is truly seen, it feels identical to identity. The ancient texts do not describe the rulers as psychological archetypes in modern language. They speak in cosmological terms, planetary spheres, heavenly authorities, and powers of fate. But the implication is clear. The lower cosmos is not neutral. It's ordered. In a Nagi text known as On the Origin of the World, the rulers are explicitly tied to fate, the chain of necessity binding beings to cycles of birth, time, and influence. Seasons repeat, planets revolve, patterns return, and human life reflects this rhythm. This manifests in things like temperament, impulse, and reaction. The Gnostic insight is not that these forces are all-powerful, it is that they are limited. They operate within deficiency, what the tradition calls the kanama, the realm outside the fullness of the pleioma. Here is the implication. If you are born within a cosmos structured by planetary governance, then your initial awareness unfolds inside layered limitation. You inherit tendencies shaped by time. You inherit perception structured by movement. You inherit a worldview formed beneath rulers who themselves do not know the higher source, which means the very lens through which you interpret reality may already be conditioned by a system that mistakes itself for ultimate truth. When the architect does not know the higher realm, the structure it builds cannot reflect it. This is not a declaration of powerlessness. It's a revelation of the structure you were born inside. The rulers believe they are ultimate. Yaldabaoth famously declares, "I am God, and there is no other beside me." But he speaks in ignorance and does not see the realms above him. And so the structure he generates reflects that ignorance. This is why the spark within humanity destabilizes the system, because the spark does not belong to the chain of fate. In the Apocryphon of John, when the divine light enters Adam, the rulers become disturbed. They did not anticipate something beyond their control entering the realm they built. The human then becomes a paradox formed below but animated from above. In later Gnostic writings, such as the Pistopia, they describe the soul passing through the spheres after death. The rulers attempt to reclaim them to their realm. But the awakened soul possesses knowledge, names, seals, recognition of its origin. And that recognition changes everything. And here's the real tension of this teaching. If you identify completely with the structure, with temperament, impulse, fate, and the layered architecture of the lower heavens, then you remain governed by it. But if you begin to perceive that there is something in you that was not constructed by the rulers, then the structure is no longer identical with your identity. This is not about destroying the structure, but simply seeing it. Seeing that your deepest conscious awareness is not produced by external cosmic hierarchy, but something far more vast and unimaginable. And once you see this, the real question becomes, how do you live differently? Once you recognize that your deepest awareness is not the identity shaped by the structure, and the answer to that question determines whether you remain within the architecture or move beyond it. If the seven rulers describe the layered architecture of the lower cosmos, and if that same architecture shaped the visible human, then the work is not about fighting back. It's about recognizing the structure. The Gnostic path was never rebellion within the game. It was about discernment and about refusing to play the game altogether. Instead of asking, how do I improve myself? Ask what in me reflects the outer structure. Because until the structure is seen within, it will appear to exist only outside of you. Because the rulers govern through identification, through reflex, patent reaction, and your assumption that every impulse is you. So you must remember you are the divine spark observing the structure. Ascent is not achieved through force. It is achieved through recognition gnosis. So how does that translate into lived experience? Not through endless meditation and spiritual practices, but through simple observation. When a reaction rises, pause. Not to suppress it, but to see it. When a pattern repeats, don't judge it. Just notice that it is patterned. Patterns belong to architecture, but awareness belongs to the spark. You do not need to destroy the structure, but something shifts when you realize, I am aware of this. That simple conscious awareness begins the inner shift. Rather than asking, how do I escape the structure? Ask, what in me now sees the structure? Let that question echo quietly beneath your daily movements. Over time, you may notice a widening space between reaction and awareness, between impulse and identification. In that space, something quiet becomes visible. You begin to notice that reaction once felt automatic, inevitable, even justified. But when seen clearly, it loses its authority, not because it disappears, but because it is no longer fused with identity. The structure may still move, but it no longer moves as you. This is how governance weakens, not through resistance, but through non-identification. This is the beginning of ascent, not upward in space, but inward through recognition. You begin to see that what is constructed can be observed. And what can be observed is not the deepest self. You are living within architecture, but you are not of it. And the moment you begin to live from that distinction, the structure can no longer define you. And if you want to go deeper into this architecture, into what it really means to step beyond it, you can download my free guide, Escaping the Illusion, a Gnostic guide to mastering reality. I expand on these teachings in a more practical way, how to recognize the structures shaping your perception and how to begin living from that deeper center. It's completely free. The link is in the description. You were told your soul is simple, oneself moving through a neutral world, but the ancient revelations paint a different image. They describe structure, 7 rulers, 7 powers, and 7 spheres governing fate and time. But now you know you are the spark within that architecture, above cycles and above knowledge formed below, but animated from above. Yes, the layered governance of the lower cosmos is real, but it's not ultimate. Questioning the architecture is the first step to awakening. And seeing your true awareness helps you detach from the structure. And once you see that, you can never fully collapse back into unconscious identification. The cosmic rulers govern the heavens, but they do not own the spark. And the moment the spark remembers its origin, the architecture begins to loosen. But loosening does not mean the world disappears. The heavens still turn, time still moves, impulse still rises. The difference is not in the structure, it is in the seat from which you are living. When the seat shifts, perception shifts. The same world remains, but it no longer defines you in the same way. The heavens still turn, but you are no longer unconsciously turning with them. When awareness stands prior to identification, fate loses its grip. The rulers govern what is constructed, but they cannot govern what is aware of construction. And that distinction is the beginning of freedom. So here is the question I want to leave you with. If your soul was formed within 7 layers of governance, what if you were never formed at all? Notice what answers, notice what resists. Because that tension between structure and spark is not a theory, it is the living edge of awakening. If this resonated with you, let me know in the comments. And if you want to continue exploring the deeper architecture of the soul, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the Gnostic Eye so you never miss our weekly teachings. And if you want something physical to anchor this reflection, you can explore our sacred artwork and writings in the Gnostic Eye store, created as quiet reminders of what was never lost. The link is in the description.